Welcome to the Private School Leader Podcast, where private school leaders learn how to thrive and not just survive as they serve and lead their schools. I strongly believe that it is possible to have a long and happy and fulfilling career as a private school leader. And my passion is to help you figure out exactly how to do just that, right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And I'm your host, Mark Minkus. So I kind of have a love-hate relationship with countdown clocks. And, I was thinking about, I love the countdown clock in Times Square on New Year's Eve and count it down to, Happy New Year. And the countdown clock I don't like is the scoreboard when my favorite football team is losing and there's 2 minutes left in the game and the clock just keeps counting down and counting down. But I actually have a confession to make about a countdown clock and about New Year's Eve in particular. And so when our daughters were young and it was New Year's Eve and they needed to go to bed and it was like, 8 p.m. or whatever, my wife and I, we weren't going to have them stay up until midnight. And so one year we had, this is when we had VCRs, we had a VHS tape of the ball drop. And so we popped that in around, 8 p.m. and celebrated, yay, everybody. And then everybody went to bed. And as far as they knew, it was midnight. And then when they got older, they started asking some questions, and eventually that didn't work out anymore. But I guess that's a little white lie to my daughters to get them to go to bed on New Year's Eve. But the reason I have on my mind countdown clocks is because I believe that every private school leader has a giant invisible countdown clock. It's invisible to everybody except you. You can see it. And it starts counting down somewhere around between the July 1st and maybe the 4th of July. And then it seems like it starts counting down faster once you get to August 1st. And this countdown clock hits 0 on the morning of your first teacher in service day. And so I think you know what I'm talking about. Just that feeling of where did the summer go? And I've got so much left to do and not enough time to do it. And the thing that I was thinking about is how you have good intentions to have awesome teacher in-service days. You have good intentions for them to go well and get off to a great start and just all of these things, but you're so busy that you don't have time to plan and make them exactly how you want them to be those awesome teacher in-service days. Well, on today's episode of the Private School Leader Podcast, I'm going to tell you 4 ways to improve your August teacher in-service days. And just before we do that, I want to give you a free resource. And this one is called The 6 Things That Every Private School Teacher Wants from Their Leader. And this guide is a 6-page PDF that I think can be a real game changer for you. And I guarantee you that if you do these 6 things, the teachers at your school will be happy to follow you anywhere. And you can pick up this free guide by going to theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. And again, that's a free gift to you just to say thank you for listening to the podcast. And it's called The 6 Things That Every Private School Teacher Wants from Their Leader. And you can grab that at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. And I was talking about teacher in service days being kind of right around the corner. And I wanted to let you know that earlier this week, I launched a new resource called the Private School Teacher Academy. And these are on-demand webinars with guided notes and discussion questions and additional teacher resources. And these 4 on-demand webinars, one is called The 5 Keys to Having Your Best School Year Ever. One's called The Differentiation Playbook, helping every student learn without burning yourself out. That's for your teachers as well. And then we have the 6 habits of an outstanding private school teacher. And the 4th is how to better support students who have mental health struggles. So those are all things that your teachers would want to know. Certainly those could be used during teacher in service or during PD days throughout the school year. And if you're interested, if you want to learn more, go to theprivateschoolleader.com/teacher, and you can check out more about Private School Teacher Academy. So I want to talk to you about the 4 ways that you can improve your August teacher in service days. So number 1, I'm going to call this start before you start. Number 1 is start before you start. And so what I mean by that is that I know you're busy. I know that your task list is long and the number of days before the first in-service day is getting shorter. But I want you to think about how you can improve your teacher in service days before your first teacher in service day. So start before you start. And so, first of all, some of these things you already do. Maybe most of these things you already do. And that's awesome. If that's the case, fantastic. Pat yourself on the back, and you're crushing it as far as your teacher in service days in August. But if not, I want to try and help with doable things and to just help you think about this maybe in a different way, in a little bit more of a proactive way. And so start before you start. The first thing I was thinking is the upbeat email with the schedule. And so there's the question of, what's too early to be sending an email to the teachers with your, welcoming them back and saying, here's the schedule for in-service days, and, the dress is casual, and, lunch will be provided on these days, and you do lunch on your own on these days. You know the email that I'm talking about. And so I think that when you send it, that's up to you. But I think it's just important that we remember that our teachers, obviously most of them are enjoying their summer. And even though they love their jobs, almost all of them love their jobs, and even though some of them have summer jobs, it's still this mindset of kind of back to school and And so I think that just a short, upbeat email, and then also when you wrap up, is to say, enjoy the rest of your summer, can't wait to see you, that kind of thing. I think it needs to be brief. It needs to be short. I do think that there should be a link to the schedule. And even if every block of the schedule for however many days you have isn't filled in with something because you're still working on that, at least give them an idea of, when things start and stop, and especially the lunch, what they're going to wear, etc. And then also keep in mind who's getting this. Your new teachers. I know many of you have a separate orientation for your new teachers. But again, an upbeat email with the schedule. Keep it brief. Sign off with, enjoy the rest of your summer. And I would say to insert the schedule as a link or as an attachment. So that's the first thought I had. And then another one is online training in advance. So let me tell you what I'm getting at here is, so sometimes in our schedule, there are things that they need to do, like anaphylactic shock training comes to mind as far as something that was on video. There are, I'm sure, other examples of things that your school requires once a year. And so, as you know, you have a wide range of teachers. Some like to do things as soon as they can and get them over with. And so let's say that watching the anaphylactic shock videos and passing the quiz and getting your little certificate and emailing it to the nurse. I'm just, reflecting on my experience. Let's say that's something that's an expectation by before the first day of school by the last teacher in service day. My suggestion is that you could include that in your upbeat email with the schedule and just say, hey, no pressure, but for you, that like to get on things earlier, here's the link. So the online training in advance, you might have none of that. You might have lots of that. We had lots of that at my most recent school. And so my point is those in-service days are busy. They're packed full, and they're trying to get their rooms ready. And then they're also trying to do those online trainings. And for some people, if they have the option of having those in advance, then they'll just get it over with. So that's another thought. And then something that I want you to think about when it comes to start before you start is to just look at the schedule through their eyes. And I'll give you two examples. So when you're building your schedule for your teacher in service and you have lunch and it's a day that you provide lunch, let's say, if right after lunch it's some training that's going to require some brain power, that might not be the best. That's probably not the best time of day to schedule that training. They have a lunch or they have a big lunch and it's the afternoon, it's starting to get hot. That sounds like something that would be better for the morning. So that's one example. Here's another example. Most schools do some sort of ALICE training or run, hide, fight, active shooter training. And most of them are kind of like an interactive video. Sometimes you might have a police officer come in and do a presentation with slides and some videos that are scenarios, and it's like, okay, what should this person do in this situation? So ALICE training or run, hide, fight training, active shooter training. So let's say that that's going to be on the schedule. The question then becomes, what's next? What do we roll right into? Okay. And the reason I'm saying that is because ALICE training, run, hide, fight, active shooter training can be very emotionally upsetting to some people. It can be very triggering. It's upsetting because they're jarred into the reality that, this could happen. And unfortunately, we read about it online happening, way too often during a school year. So my point is, do we want to have that kind of training and then go right into another training? Or do we want it to be lunch? Do we want it to be even better, work in your room? Because everybody reacts differently. And so then everyone wants to recuperate or restore back to their baseline emotionally differently. So I just wanted to put that out there because I've made that mistake before where we have that training and then there's a couple teachers who kind of needed to step out and take a few minutes, but I had scheduled it to just roll right into something else. So look at the schedule through their eyes and just kind of think about when things should happen and what should happen after that if it's a hard thing. So number one is start before you start. And then number two is get it right on day one. Get it right on day one. Of course, you're trying to get it right on day one. So I have some suggestions, and that's what they are, suggestions. I'm not saying you have to do this. I'm not your boss. I'm not your head of school. I'm not your board chair. But these are some suggestions based on trial and error over the years. So let's say that you decide, let's just say for the sake of conversation, I know that all of you have a different number of work days. Let's just say that you have 3 or 4 teacher in-service days before the first day of school. I know some of you have far more than that. Some of you have fewer. But let's just say it's 3 or 4. And let's say that in the course of those 4 days, that you're going to give them a total of either 6 hours or 8 hours to work in their classrooms. And, to decorate the room and get the desks where they belong and work on lesson plans or whatever it is. Usually some form of work in rooms appears on the August teacher in-service schedule. And if it doesn't appear on yours, I would ask you to consider that, because get it right on day one. What I'm thinking about is I think it's important to front load working in your classroom, working in their classrooms, especially on that first day. I'm not saying the whole first day, but if you have a total of, let's say, 6 or 8 hours, maybe 3 or 4 of those hours are on day one. Because in my experience, teachers, especially lower school teachers, are pretty distracted until they get some things accomplished in their classroom, or they get their classroom looking the way they want it to. Now, that being said, I know most of your schools allow teachers to come in before the first day of in-service, and many lower school teachers do. In my experience, middle school and high school teachers don't as much. But some of these teachers that want their classrooms to look really, really good, some of them just can't, whether it's childcare or whether they have a summer job or whatever the case might be. So if you want them to be somewhat less distracted and more tuned in to what's going on with you and what's going on in the in-service in the main room where you're having it, or at least where you're starting the day, I recommend the schedule to be front-loaded with your time of working in classes and then spread out some of the other hours. I also have a strong preference that you begin day one with some social time. And so snacks like breakfast, it doesn't have to be like full-on breakfast. It can be stuff from Costco or Sam's Club that's, kind of like some muffins or even just some like granola bars type things, maybe some coffee, but just to schedule in some time where they can reconnect. Because you want the vibe in the room when you start, when you say, good morning, everyone, and then you start, quote unquote, you want the vibe in there to be good. You want it to be upbeat. You want it to be positive. And so teachers, remember, they're coming back. They haven't seen each other in a while, but they've been in a totally different mode. Many of them have been in a summer mode. Maybe some of them have not had summer jobs. Their sleep patterns are different as far as when they get up and when they go to bed and just all the things. And so I think it's important to give them some time to just socialize and hang out and just kind of have that soft start to the day for maybe 30 minutes. And so then again, when you have this opportunity to be like the first time when they're all together and you're going to say good morning, and you have their attention, I think that it's important to consider having something to say that is inspirational, aspirational, that kind of sets the tone for the school year. Maybe you have a theme for the year. If you're a religious school, maybe you have a Bible verse for the year. Whatever it is, it doesn't have to be, sports movie pregame locker room speech level of inspiration. But I think that if you're the leader of the school and you're starting a school year, think about it this way. If you were setting an intention for the school year for your faculty, what would it be? Another way of thinking of it is if you were to wave a magic wand over this coming school year, and on the last day of school, you were able to look back on it and say, we had an amazing school year. What would that look like? What would it sound like? What would it feel like? And then that can kind of sharpen your thoughts as to what you might say to get people thinking along those same lines. Because I think there are far too many schools where the leader says, good morning. Okay, welcome back. Hope you had a great summer. Okay, now take out your, take out the employee handbook and let's start going through it. I just really think that's a missed opportunity where we can, do something together, and you as the leader can inspire your staff and connect with them. John Maxwell, one of my favorite authors, leadership books, he says, always touch a heart before you ask for a hand. And so I think that that's a good idea with each new school year as well. And then just in general, with Get It Right on the first day, just make sure that room is comfortable. You can have everything going great, and then if the room is too hot, if there's no water in the room, or if there's no snacks, if the sound system isn't working, like one of those things can really throw you for a loop. I know it has for me in the past. And then I think the last thing about Get It Right on day one is just mentally prepare yourself for a lot of questions. Your teachers have been kind of thinking about something. Some of them have been perseverating on something. Maybe this is the first time they've been on campus and they went to their room and the smartboard wasn't hooked up and the desks weren't where they were supposed to be. And so, again, there's going to be an onslaught of questions and maybe even some people that are upset on that first day. And I know that there were times where I had to mentally prepare myself for that so that I didn't allow them to influence my, optimism and enthusiasm, because optimism and enthusiasm are contagious. And if I am not prepared for all the questions and for a few disgruntled people, that if I do one or two things or have the maintenance or the tech person do one or two things, that they're going to be fine. If I'm in that mindset that that's going to happen, then I'm much more prepared to not let that negatively impact my mood. So, number one, start before you start. Number two, get it right on day one. And number three, treat them like adults. So, I am not a big fan of going page by page through the handbook in Teacher in Service. And I know that there's some of you that are thinking, well, yeah, but they don't read the handbook. Okay. They are adults. They are professionals. They all have college degrees. Being an educator is a professional occupation. And I think we need to treat them like adults. And when you share the handbook with them, this is my suggestion, okay, is that this is what I did for years. Send them an email. It could be on the morning of the first day of Teacher in Service. Doesn't have to be before then. But I would send an email. I would attach or insert a hyperlink to this year's employee handbook or the family handbook. And then if there were a few changes, I would highlight those changes in the body of the email. And then I put a link to a Google form, and it just said, before the first day of school, you're expected to read the handbook, and then just check here, yes, I've read the handbook. Okay. Most people have enough ethics and enough honesty that they're not going to check that thing unless they've read it. But many people will just check it anyways. I get that. The biggest lie in America is, click here to say you've read and understand the terms and conditions of blah, 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 whatever. Okay. So there are definitely going to be some people who click it that don't read it, but you can still hold them accountable because they clicked it and they said they read it. It is the expectation that they're going to read and understand the handbook. I think we need to treat them like adults and not go through page by page by page of the handbook. And certainly if people have questions, they can go to their supervisor, or if you're a smaller school and you are the whole admin team, then they can go to you. But I think that we need to start treating them like adults. Another thing is, for example, when we're, our teachers know how to read. So let's not read to them things that they can read for themselves. And whether that's a document and we're going through it word by word, page by page, or if it's slides and you're reading right from the slides, I just think that these things are, if we are a little more prepared, we can make sure that we're not doing those things. So that's a pet peeve of mine. I used to, for years, go through the handbook. We went through the employee handbook page by page, and we went through the family handbook page by page, and I regret doing that. And I changed that up probably the second half of my career. And so just a strong preference. It's just something for you to think about. Okay, so number 1, start before you start. Number 2, get it right on day 1. Number 3, treat them like adults. And then number 4, help them grow. And I know that many times we look at in-service week versus a PD day differently. I get that. But I do think that your in-service week should have some component of professional development, because I know that there's a lot of things to do, like CPR training, and if you're a responsive classroom school, or if you're, doing, if it's an reaccreditation year, and there's needs to have some committee meetings and all the things. There's always way too much to do. And I know you want in your mind, from a good intention standpoint, that you want to have some meaningful PD, but there are some obstacles to that. You are very, very busy trying to get ready for the first day of school with the building and the curriculum and enrollment and all the things, still maybe trying to hire that last teacher, right? And meaningful PD takes time to prepare, and you're short on time. And it's very difficult to find PD that's meaningful for all of your faculty, from your early childhood teachers through your 8th grade or even 12th grade teachers. And so I just want to let you know that I can help you with that with one of 2 things. And what I have in mind that I can help you with is, first of all, is Parent Academy. And Parent Academy, there's 2 plug-and-play PDs. They're 45 minutes long, so imagine your teachers sitting in the big space, and in front of them they have their guided notes and their discussion questions. And then up on the screen, I have part 1 and part 2 of building effective relationships with private school parents. And I teach them all about, hopes and fears, and about how to have better meetings, and how to do surprise and delight, and how to be more proactive, and all those things in Parent Academy. And so the 45-minute webinar, and then they break into groups or one large group, and they have the discussion questions. You could have a easily 60 or 90-minute PD experience for your teachers, with just those 2 webinars for Parent Academy. And you have lifetime access to that. And so if you're curious, go to theprivateschoolleader.com/parentacademy. And then, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, I also have a brand new thing that I just launched this week called Private School Teacher Academy. And that, very similar to the explanation I just gave for Parent Academy. But this one has 4 webinars, and each one is about 50 minutes long. Comes with guided notes, on-demand video webinar, and discussion questions, and teacher resources, and a mini poster that captures what was just learned in the large group, and they can then hang that up on their bulletin board next to their desk, etc. And the 4 titles, again, for these 4 webinars: the 5 keys to having your best school year ever. That's a great webinar for in-service. It really kind of kicks off the year. The differentiation playbook, helping every student learn without burning yourself out, because we want them to differentiate, but we also don't want them to make 25 lesson plans for 25 kids. The third one is the 6 habits of an outstanding private school teacher, and then how to better support students who have mental health struggles. Now, those 4 webinars are all standalone. You don't have to do them in any kind of order. You wouldn't have to do all of them during in-service or anything like that. Maybe you do one during in-service and you spread the others out during your PD days, and then you've checked a big box when it comes to professional development for your faculty. And if that is of interest to you, then you can check it out at theprivateschoolleader.com/teacher. So the big takeaways from today's episode: I am giving you 4 suggestions on how to improve your teacher in service days. Number 1, start before you start. Number 2, get it right on day 1. Number 3, treat them like adults. And number 4, help them grow. And your call to action is to just pick one of these ideas and implement it for your teacher in service days. And a reminder that I have a free gift for you, the 6 things that every private school teacher wants from their leader. And you can grab that for free at theprivateschoolleader.com/guide. And then I've mentioned a couple of times now, Private School Teacher Academy just came out this week. And you can learn more at theprivateschoolleader.com/teacher. There's testimonials and pricing and different examples of what it is that I'm talking about. And so if you get value from this podcast, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at mark.o.minkus@gmail.com. Or if you have any questions about Parent Academy or the Private School Teacher Academy, you can email me. Show notes for today's episode are at theprivateschoolleader.com/episode 196. And if you would, I would really appreciate it if you would share this podcast, this episode, but maybe the link to the podcast in general with another leader in your life or a rising leader at your school. And I've been your host, Mark Minkus. I just want to say I appreciate you and all of your hard work that you're doing for those lucky kids and those lucky teachers. Thank you so much for taking some of your precious time to join me here today. And I'll see you next time right here on the Private School Leader Podcast. And until then, always remember to serve first, lead second, and make a difference.